What if everything you were taught in school about surviving in the winter forest is hopelessly outdated and has nothing to do with the actual practices of ancient hunters? We are accustomed to thinking that sleeping on the snow without special modern equipment is a sure way to die of hypothermia within the first few hours of being in the cold. However, the indigenous peoples of North America have proven the opposite for centuries, turning the icy desert into a warm and safe bed, even in the harshest blizzards. In this video, we will reveal the secrets of ancient natural insulation techniques that allowed people to survive in the extreme north without frostbite. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how ordinary dry grass and air chemistry turn the icy ground into the equivalent of a modern heating pad. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of how humans can cheat the physics of cold without using modern synthetic materials and gas. For warriors of the plains and hunters of the subarctic, snow was never an enemy. It was perceived as a malleable and highly functional building material. It is important to understand that Native Americans never lay down on bare snow, as direct contact with it instantly sucks heat from the body. Their technique was based on creating a complex, multi-layered pie of natural materials, where each individual layer performed a strictly defined physical function. The main task was to completely stop the process of heat transfer between the warm human body and the frozen ground. This skill was honed over thousands of years in conditions where any small mistake could cost not only a warrior's life, but that of an entire family. Without understanding these principles, the existence of the great tribes in the northern latitudes would have been physically impossible during the winter months. They observed animals that knew how to settle down for the night in snowdrifts and adopted their natural tricks. Every detail of their equipment was the result of centuries of trial and error by many generations of ancestors. The Indians believed that nature itself provides man with everything he needs. One only needs to use its gifts wisely. Attention to detail allowed them to sleep peacefully where modern man would panic. Particular attention was paid to choosing a place to spend the night, which had to be protected from direct wind and possible avalanches. Groups of Lakota or Cheyenne hunters knew how to find such places in the folds of the terrain, where the snow lay in the most even and dense layer. They carefully cleared away the loose top layer to reach a solid base, which served as the foundation for their future bed. In this foundation, they trampled or carved out special depressions that corresponded to the size of the human body. This minimized the total area of contact between the cold air and the sleeper's thermal protection. Such preparation took very little time, but was crucial to the quality of a good night's sleep. Ancient knowledge also included an understanding of how the structure of snow changes under the influence of body temperature. If the bedding melted, the resulting moisture would instantly destroy all the insulating properties of the grass or fur covering. Therefore, the Indians used intermediate layers that served as drainage and at the same time as a ventilation channel for removing steam. These secrets were passed down from father to son during long winter journeys across the snow-covered prairies. Knowing the correct sequence for laying the materials was as important as the ability to shoot an arrow accurately. Today, these skills seem like magic to us, but for them, it was an everyday part of their harsh daily life. Each tribe made its own adjustments to the design of the winter bed, depending on the resources available in their region. In the plains, they often used the skins of large animals, while in the forests, they used bark and pine branches in huge quantities. Despite the differences in materials, the physical principle remained the same throughout North America. They knew that still air was the best insulator and sought to trap it in the layers of their bed. This allowed them to wake up refreshed and full of energy even after a night spent in the epicenter of a blizzard. Mastery of survival in the cold was a source of pride and a guarantee of high status among fellow tribesmen. Indians often used group sleeping arrangements to combine the warmth of several bodies under a common shelter made of large bison hides. This significantly reduced the amount of energy each individual had to expend to maintain their internal temperature. They lay close together, creating a single thermal space protected by a powerful layer of external insulation. This method was especially effective for small scouting parties that could not build large fires in enemy territory. Collective survival was the basis of the social structure of all tribes of the Great Plains and northern forests. Together, they could overcome obstacles that were beyond the power of individuals. Do you think modern technologies are really more effective than these ancient methods of survival in extreme conditions? Share your opinion in the comments because your experience may be useful to other viewers of our channel. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new discoveries about the life and amazing skills of indigenous peoples. We are preparing a lot more interesting material that will change your perception of human capabilities in the wild. Your participation helps us develop and make our content even better and more detailed. Are you ready to learn the truth about why snow is actually the best friend of anyone caught in a blizzard? Despite its low temperature, freshly fallen snow has unique porous properties that make it an excellent insulator. It consists of 90% air trapped between ice crystals, which prevents the movement of heat. Native Americans used this property to create special depressions that protected them from the icy winds of the prairies. Inside such a snow hole, the temperature was always significantly higher than in the open air. This natural mechanism worked on the principle of a modern thermos, maintaining a stable microenvironment inside the temporary shelter. The dense snow cover served as a barrier that prevented the precious calories released by the human body from escaping into the environment. The deeper the layer of snow above the sleeper, the more stable the temperature inside his makeshift burrow. Many subarctic Indian tribes built their dwellings so that they were covered with as much snow as possible on the outside. This turned the light structures made of poles into real fortresses, inaccessible to even the most severe frost. The snow did not cool. It carefully preserved the heat that was managed to obtain inside. They understood that different types of snow have different thermophysical properties depending on humidity and density. Fresh powder snow was the warmest, but it easily collapsed under a person's weight, requiring a solid foundation. Old, compacted snow was stronger, but conducted cold slightly faster due to its denser structure. The Indians knew how to combine these properties using dense snow for the walls and loose snow for the outer covering of the shelter. This allowed them to create structures that lasted all winter and required minimal heating. Careful observation of nature gave them knowledge that we now learn from physics textbooks. It is important to note that they never sealed their snow shelters completely, always leaving a tiny ventilation hole. They knew about the danger of suffocation and carbon dioxide accumulation in a closed space under the snow. This hole also helped to remove excess moisture, which inevitably appeared from human breathing. The balance between heat retention and ventilation was a real art, accessible only to experienced hunters. One mistake in construction could lead to wet clothes, which meant certain death. Their caution was the key to longevity in the wild and unpredictable nature. Snow was often used not only as insulation, but also as a building block to create protective ramparts around the nomadic camp. These ramparts not only hid the tribe from the eyes of enemies, but also served as a powerful shield against blizzards that could last for weeks. Inside such a ring of snow, a special microclimate was created, where the temperature was several degrees higher than in the open steppe. This allowed women and the elderly to go about their daily business with less risk of frostbite. Snow became an ally that provided shelter and protection to those who knew how to use it. The Indians lived in harmony with winter, not trying to fight it. Even during quick transitions, when there was no time to build a proper camp, they used snow for short breaks. A hunter could simply burrow into a snowdrift, wrapped in a bison skin, to wait out a sudden gust of wind. The snow instantly stopped heat loss from convection, creating a zone of still air around the body. This allowed them to regain their strength and continue on their way after the elements had calmed down a bit. Such techniques were vital in the Great Plains, where the weather could change in a matter of minutes. The Indians were part of this landscape, acting in accordance with its laws. They also noticed that under a thick layer of snow, the ground remained unfrozen much longer than in open areas. This allowed them to dig small pits to store food supplies, protecting them from freezing. The snow acted as a blanket for the earth itself, preserving its internal heat from the deep penetration of cold. They used this feature when building their beds, trying to dig as deep as possible into the snow. The depth was their protection and guarantee that the night frost would not reach their bodies. Snow was the most accessible and effective material that nature provided them in abundance. In the next chapter, you will learn how the Indians prepared the surface so that the snow beneath them would not turn into ice water from their body heat. This knowledge was critical to staying dry throughout the night and not freezing. What do you think was the most effective material for creating the first protective layer on the snow? Share your guesses before we move on to a detailed analysis of this unique technology. Your opinion is very important to us, and we always welcome interesting comments. You've probably never heard of this unique secret because it involves the most subtle insulation adjustments. The most famous and effective survival tactic in the snow was to use the unique properties of coniferous branches. This technique, perfected by them in the forests of the Northeast, allowed them to create an almost perfect thermal platform. The Iroquois and Algonquin Indians knew that spruce or fir branches have an amazing ability to spring and retain a huge volume of air. They laid them in rows, starting from the feet and moving towards the head, so that the tips of the branches overlapped each other. It worked like this. A hunter pursued by the cold would create a structure that raised his body 10 or 15 centimeters above the snow. This created a zone of dead air under the sleeper, which did not participate in convection and served as a powerful thermal barrier. The pine branches not only insulated but also provided excellent ventilation, preventing moisture from accumulating under the sleeping person's body. If the bedding was assembled correctly, the snow beneath it did not melt even during a long winter night. This was vital as any moisture could lead to rapid cooling of the body and illness. The secret lay in the correct angle of the branches and their density in each layer. The second layer of bedding consisted of a huge amount of dry grass or finely chopped bark from certain types of trees. This material served as a soft filler that filled the voids between the spruce branches and made the bed more comfortable. The grass also retained the heat emanating from the body, preventing it from dissipating into the cold lower layers of spruce branches and snow. The Indians chose grass with hollow stems, as the air inside them acted as additional insulation. This combination of materials created the effect of a modern multi-layer mattress that warms and supports the body. It was a complex engineering design created from the simplest forest materials. They also knew that fresh pine needles release essential oils that help clear the breath and calm the nervous system during sleep. This had not only a physical, but also a therapeutic effect, helping warriors recover more quickly after difficult treks through deep snow. The smell of pine needles in the winter camp was a symbol of safety and well-deserved rest after a long day of work. Each branch was chosen with care because the hunter's health the next morning depended on it. The Indians treated the gathering of materials for shelter as a sacred ritual, thanking nature for its gifts. This connection with the forest was the basis of their identity and survival. Often, to enhance insulation, they added a layer of charcoal from old fires to the very base of their bed. Charcoal absorbed excess moisture well and served as an additional barrier to the cold coming from the frozen ground. This method was used in permanent winter camps, where people lived in one place for several months. This allowed them to keep the floor of their dwellings dry and relatively warm, even when the outside temperatures were very low. The use of secondary resources, such as charcoal, demonstrated the incredible practicality and ingenuity of the indigenous peoples. They wasted nothing, finding a use for every scrap of resources. In some cases, when the snow was particularly deep, they built entire platforms out of logs on which they laid spruce branches and grass. This guaranteed complete protection from melting snow and ensured perfect dryness throughout the winter. Such platforms were part of their long-term winter homes, wigwams or longhouses of the Iroquois. Raising the sleeping area above the ground was a standard practice in all northern cultures of North America. This allowed the warm air from the fire to better heat the bed on all sides, including the bottom. Comfort and safety were the top priorities when building winter dwellings. Do you agree that nature has already created everything we need for our comfort, and we just need to learn how to use it properly? Write about it in the comments below this video. We are very interested in your opinion on this matter. Like this video if you also admire the wisdom and ingenuity of ancient peoples who lived in harmony with the forest. Your support helps us find more and more facts about the great history of Native Americans. We value every viewer and try to make our stories as detailed and interesting as possible. What you are about to learn will change your perception of the comfort of Wild West warriors, because we are going to talk about animal skins. In addition to plant coverings, Native Americans were absolute masters at using animal materials to combat the cold. They didn't just wrap themselves in fur, but purposefully created complex thermoregulation systems using different types of hides. It was a real intellectual game with nature, in which the health and combat effectiveness of the tribe was at stake. Every hunter knew which hide was best for warmth and which was best for protection from the biting moisture. One of the most effective techniques was to use bison skins obtained exclusively in late autumn or early winter. At this time, the animal's fur becomes as thick and long as possible, providing the best thermal insulation possible in nature. But the main secret lay in the structure of the hair itself, which in many northern animals becomes hollow inside with the onset of cold weather. These tiny air chambers inside each hair created an insurmountable barrier to the cold, working like modern high-tech insulation. The Indians intuitively understood this, choosing the skins of the most hardy inhabitants of the prairies for their winter bedding. They also used specially tanned suede to create outer covers that protected the fur layers from getting wet and dirty. Suede remained soft in the cold and did not rustle, which was critical for scouts in enemy territory. Careful treatment of the hides with fats and smoke made them virtually waterproof and very durable in use. Each skin passed through the hands of craftsmen who knew how to preserve its natural properties for many years. Fur products were the most valuable items in every family, passed down from older to younger generations. Careful treatment of belongings was the key to survival in a harsh world. Sometimes the Indians imitated the structure of birds' nests or animal burrows, creating a cocoon of down and small feathers around their bodies. They collected the down of waterfowl and stuffed it into special leather bags, which served as pillows or additional insulation. This added another layer of protection where heat loss was highest, such as in the neck and head areas. Such details made their sleep not just possible, but truly restorative and deep. They learned from the best teachers in the world, from the wildest nature itself, which does not forgive mistakes. Every solution they observed in nature was incorporated into their daily lives. Another clever trick was to use skins with residual subcutaneous fat as a waterproofing layer. This fat prevented moisture from the snow from seeping up to the body, acting as a natural membrane. Despite their specific smell, such skins were indispensable when spending the night on very wet or melted snow. The Indians knew how to make use of every part of a hunted animal, throwing away nothing that could help them fight the elements. Their practicality was automatic and served as the basis for their independence from outside supplies. They were completely self-sufficient in their ability to keep themselves warm. In the next chapter, we will talk about how Native Americans used the physics of convection inside their dwellings to further enhance the effect of their unique bedding. How do you think the shape of their dwellings helped to retain heat from the ground? Share your thoughts in the comments. We are always interested in reading your theories and assumptions. We continue our journey into the world of ancient knowledge that helped great peoples thrive in the frozen prairies. Many more amazing discoveries about the way of life of Native Americans await us. Native Americans masterfully used the laws of convection, even without knowing this scientific term in its modern sense. They understood that warm air always rises, while cold air settles on the floor of their dwellings or temporary shelters. To avoid hypothermia, they built their sleeping places on a small elevation above ground level. This allowed the cold air to flow to lower points, leaving the sleeper in a zone of relative comfort. Even when sleeping under the open sky, they tried to find a small slope or make an artificial mound of dense snow. This approach minimized contact with the coldest layer of air, which accumulates directly above the ground surface. Inside permanent winter dwellings, this system was perfected through the use of special screens made of thick skins. These screens directed the heat from a small fire directly to the sleeping areas, creating the effect of a soft oven. All these details together created conditions in which sleeping on the snow was not a trial, but a full-fledged rest. The Indians believed that heat should be preserved as much as food supplies for the winter. To enhance the convection effect, they often used a cone shape in their portable dwellings, known as teepees. A narrow opening at the top created a draft that effectively removed smoke while maintaining a thermal cushion at the bottom of the room. Hunters knew that if the entrance was located on the leeward side, an area of increased pressure would be created inside, preventing the cold from entering. This was an ingenious solution that allowed them to maintain a comfortable temperature with minimal consumption of valuable firewood. Each teepee was tailored to the needs of a specific family, depending on the number of people. In forested regions, the Iroquois built long houses with sleeping shelves along the walls at different heights. The warmest places were reserved for the most vulnerable members of the tribe, as the air was much warmer at the top. The lower part of the house was used to store things, which served as an additional insulating layer between the floor and the sleeping areas. This vertical structure of space distribution was based on a deep understanding of the movement of air masses. People lived in a multi-layered environment where each level had its own distinct temperature characteristics. During extreme cold spells, they could erect additional internal tents made of light skins right inside the large dwelling. This created a double glazing effect, where the still air between the two layers of skin served as a powerful insulator. The temperature inside such a small room could be 10 or 15 degrees higher than in the main room. This saved resources and ensured a good night's sleep, even during the most severe blizzards outside. Such modularity was a characteristic feature of the architecture of the indigenous peoples of North America during the colonial period. Interestingly, they also used a specific entrance design for their winter dugouts, making it lower than the main floor. This created a so-called cold trap that prevented warm air from escaping and cold air from entering the room. This technique is often found among the peoples of the Arctic, but it was also actively used by tribes in the subarctic zone. The principle of operation of such a barrier was based on the difference in density between cold and warm air in a closed space. It was a simple and reliable engineering solution that did not require complex tools or expensive materials. All these methods of convection control demonstrate an incredibly high level of human adaptation to the harsh natural environment. The Indians did not just survive, they created an orderly space around themselves with specified parameters of warmth and comfort. Their daily life was filled with small but extremely important tricks, which together produced a striking result of stability. Only now are we beginning to fully appreciate the depth of their knowledge of the physical properties of the surrounding world. It was a true art of living in complete harmony with the rhythms and laws of the great outdoors. Ready to learn about something that saved millions of Native American lives in the harshest of winters? Many people think that they kept warm only by large open fires, but this is a dangerous and often mistaken belief. A huge fire quickly melts the snow beneath it, turning everything around it into a wet and cold swamp, which is deadly in winter. The Indians preferred to use the slow heat method, where stones were heated in a fire and then carefully transferred to their dwellings. These stones gave off energy gradually over many hours, maintaining a constant temperature. To do this, they dug a small hole in the center of the bedding and placed hot boulders there, after wrapping them in pieces of old leather. The hole was covered with a layer of earth and dry grass, which allowed the heat to rise very slowly and evenly. Such an improvised heater could warm the bed all night without creating smoke or open fire. This allowed hunters to remain unnoticed and sleep in complete safety from accidental sparks. Mastery of fire and stone was a key skill for every experienced warrior of the Great Plains. They knew that different types of stone have different heat capacities and can retain energy for different lengths of time. Dense river stones were considered the best because they did not crack from the heat and stayed hot longer. The Indians collected such stones in advance and carried them with them during long winter journeys through snow-covered territories. It was part of their mandatory camping equipment, valued as much as weapons and food supplies. Stone was not just an object, but a reliable source of life in the icy desert for many centuries. In addition, heated stones were used to quickly dry wet shoes and clothes after a difficult journey through deep snow drifts. Wet leather turns to ice in the cold, so it had to be taken care of as quickly as possible before bedtime. Hunters carefully laid out their belongings around the warm stone, making sure they did not dry out and become brittle. This required patience and constant attention throughout the evening at camp before a well-deserved rest. The ability to care for one's equipment was a guarantee that the warrior would be ready for action the next morning. Stones were often used to boil water directly inside leather bags, allowing hot food to be prepared without the use of metal utensils. Hot soup or herbal tea before bed helped warm the body from the inside, triggering energy production processes. Internal warmth was just as important as external insulation from fur and dry grass bedding. Native Americans understood the connection between nutrition and thermoregulation, preferring fatty foods during the cold months of the year. Each such meal was aimed at building up maximum strength to combat the cold. In the next chapter, you will learn how clothing complemented this complex insulation system and why it was more important than any heavy blanket. We will examine the materials and cutting techniques that made Native American clothing the ideal tool for living in conditions of constant sub-zero temperatures. This knowledge will help you understand how indigenous peoples managed to remain mobile in places where modern explorers feel constrained. Do you think it is possible to replicate this method with heated stones today on a regular weekend hike? Share your thoughts. We would be very interested to read your ideas and practical advice. It is important to note that they never left heat sources unattended, always assigning someone to be on duty inside a large tepee or communal house. Safety was paramount, as a fire in a winter camp could be a real disaster for the entire tribe. Discipline and a clear division of responsibilities helped to avoid accidents and keep resources intact. The Indians were an organized society where everyone understood their responsibility for the common good and the warmth of the family hearth. This unity was their main strength in facing the harsh challenges of the environment. Concluding the discussion of stones, it is worth mentioning their role in purification rituals, which were also performed in winter to strengthen health. Heated stones were the heart of the sweat lodge, where warriors cleansed their bodies and spirits before important events. This was not just a hygienic procedure, but a profound spiritual process that strengthened immunity and the will to live. The heat of the stone was perceived as the sacred energy of the earth, given to people for protection and prosperity in this world. Every detail of their daily life was imbued with this deep meaning and respect for the surrounding space. A successful night in the snow depended not only on external factors, but also on how an individual prepared their internal energy before falling asleep. Native Americans knew that the human body is a living fire that needs the right fuel to keep burning all night. Before lying down on their multi-layered bedding, hunters would always eat high-calorie food consisting of concentrated fats and proteins. Pemmican, a mixture of dried bison meat and fat with berries, was the ideal fuel for long-lasting body warmth. Fats break down slowly, providing a steady flow of heat to the extremities for many hours of rest. The head and neck also required special protection, as a huge amount of the body's heat energy escapes through them. The Indians used hoods made of long-haired fur or wrapped their necks with soft strips of suede that did not bite the skin. They tried not to cover their mouths and noses completely so that exhaled vapor would not turn into frost on their clothing. The correct position of the head allowed them to breathe fresh air while keeping most of their body heat inside the fur cocoon. This required a certain habit, which every member of the tribe developed from the first years of life in winter conditions. During sleep, the Indians often assumed a fetal position, minimizing the surface area of the body in contact with the surrounding space. This allowed them to concentrate heat around vital organs and provided more efficient heating of internal cavities. If they slept in a group, people lay down spooning, warming each other with their backs and creating a single thermal contour. This collective survival strategy saved up to 30% of each participant's energy. Solidarity and physical closeness were as important tools for survival as a knife or a bow. Interestingly, they also practiced special breathing exercises before bedtime, which helped to circulate blood through the vessels. Deep and rhythmic breaths saturated the tissues with oxygen and prepared the nervous system to switch to energy-saving mode. They believed that the spirit of breath helped the body fight the ice giants that came at night from the northern lands. This mental concentration helped to avoid the panic of cold, which often leads to erratic movements and loss of strength. A calm spirit was the key to a warm body and a clear mind the next morning. To conclude the topic of clothing, it is worth noting that the Indians knew how to use even their hair for additional warmth around the neck and shoulders. Long braids wrapped around the neck served as an excellent natural scarf that was always at hand. Every detail of their appearance and behavior was subordinated to one global goal: harmonious existence in a world where cold reigned supreme. They did not fight winter, but became part of it, studying all its laws and hidden possibilities. This deep symbiosis with nature allowed them to sleep on the snow as peacefully as we sleep in our beds. One of the most insidious and underestimated dangers of sleeping in the snow is condensation, which inevitably forms from breathing and body evaporation. Native Americans understood that even the warmest bedding loses 90% of its properties when it gets wet. Moisture fills the air pockets in fur or grass, turning the insulator into an excellent conductor of cold. which begins to draw heat from the sleeper. To prevent this process, Native Americans used a complex ventilation system inside their sleeping quarters. They arranged layers of materials so that excess vapor pressure could freely escape through special channels. The top protective layer of rough leather often had microscopic holes or loose seams that functioned like a modern membrane. This allowed moisture from the body to evaporate into the environment without being trapped inside the fur cocoon and turning into frost. If they had used completely airtight materials, they would have woken up in a pool of their own moisture after just a few hours. The art of treating hides with smoke and fat allowed them to achieve the balance that was necessary for survival. Each hide underwent lengthy preparation before becoming part of a winter sleeping kit. Human breath during sleep is also a powerful source of moisture that can ruin the entire insulation system in one night. To avoid this, the Indians lay down so that their faces were always in an area with free access to fresh air. They never covered themselves with skins over their heads, knowing that the exhaled vapor would instantly turn to ice on the inner surface of the fur canopy. This frost would later begin to melt from body heat, causing the entire structure to become wet. The correct orientation of the body relative to the wind direction helped to effectively divert vapor away from the sleeping area. If clothes did get wet during the day, they were never worn for sleeping in the snow. Hunters would change into dry clothes or sleep completely naked inside a fur bag if the skins were clean and warm enough. Wet clothes on the body at rest are the shortest route to fatal hypothermia in winter conditions. Dry clothes were stored in special waterproof bags made from bison bladders or oiled leather. Such foresight allowed them to always have a backup option in case of unforeseen circumstances during the trip. First thing in the morning, the Indians aired and beat their bedding, even if it was freezing outside. Frosty air perfectly draws moisture out of the fibers, causing the frost to fall off in the form of fine dust when the skins are shaken vigorously. This allowed them to keep their equipment in perfect condition for many weeks without access to proper shelter. Every minute of the morning sun was used to expose the fur to direct rays, destroying bacteria and excess moisture. Careful maintenance of their belongings ensured their long service and reliability in battle. Summing up the fight against condensation, we can say that the Indians created the world's first effective system of smart textiles made from natural materials. They controlled humidity as skillfully as modern engineers control the climate in space stations. Their laboratory was the wilderness, and their tools were thousands of years of continuous observation of the world around them. Thanks to this, they could sleep on the snow and wake up dry and full of energy for new achievements. This skill was the basis of their freedom and independence from the vagaries of the harsh northern weather. The methods of insulation and construction of winter shelters varied considerably depending on the geographical area where the tribe was located. On the Great Plains, where the winds are biting and wood is scarce, the emphasis was on mobility and the use of bison hides. The Lakota and Cheyenne developed a unique teepee design that could be set up and insulated within an hour in an open area. They lined the bottom edge of the dwelling with snow, creating an airtight barrier that prevented cold air from blowing under the hides. Inside the teepee, there was always an island of warmth, protected from the fury of the prairie storms. In the Rocky Mountains, where the terrain is more complex and the forests are richer, the Crow and Shoshone tribes took advantage of natural shelters and rock overhangs. They built their winter camps in deep canyons that protected them from direct exposure to wind and avalanches. Here, bedding was made mainly from spruce branches and conifer bark, which were abundant. The abundance of stone allowed for the construction of more powerful hearths with heat storage functions in earthen floors. Mountain conditions dictated their own rules, and the Indians masterfully adapted their skills to the vertical landscape. In the Northeast, in the forests of modern New England and southern Canada, the Iroquois built their famous longhouses from elm and birch bark. These structures were designed to house dozens of families and had a complex system of internal zoning. The sleeping areas were located on high platforms, which completely eliminated contact with the cold floor and snow. Smoke from the central fires rose upward, creating a stable thermal curtain under the ceiling of the house. This allowed a comfortable temperature to be maintained inside the huge room even during the harshest Canadian winters. Subarctic tribes, such as the Cree and Athabascan, faced even more extreme temperatures and huge amounts of snow. Their survival methods were the most radical and included the construction of dwellings completely buried in snow. They created dome-shaped structures from flexible willow branches, which were then covered with a thick layer of snow and lined with caribou skins. Inside such a shelter, the temperature could be maintained at 10 degrees Celsius solely by the heat of human bodies. This was the limit of human adaptation to conditions close to those of the Arctic. Along the banks of the Missouri River, the Mandan and Hidatsa tribes built massive earthen houses that were partially sunk into the ground for better insulation. Thick walls of sod and earth acted as a natural thermos, keeping cool in summer and retaining heat in winter. Inside these houses, entire sleeping boxes were created, which were additionally insulated with heavy skin curtains. This provided privacy and additional protection from drafts for each family. The architecture of these peoples was perfectly integrated into the landscape of the river valleys and took into account all the features of the local climate. Concluding the geographical overview, it is worth mentioning that North America was a huge open-air survival school for the Indians. They studied every degree of latitude and every meter of altitude above sea level through the prism of heat conservation. Their civilization was built on a deep respect for space and its climatic characteristics. Thanks to this, they were able to create a unique culture in which sleeping on the snow was not a feat, but the natural right of a free person. The geography of heat was as important to them as the geography of hunting grounds. For Native Americans, winter was never a time of doom or struggle against death. It was perceived as a period of sacred rest for the earth. Cold was considered a purifying force that tested a person's strength, wisdom, and patience over many long months. They did not try to defeat winter or ignore its presence, but sought to become an organic part of it. The ability to sleep in the snow was not just a technical skill, but a profound philosophical act of acceptance of the surrounding world. An Indian lying in his fur cocoon in the middle of a snow-covered forest felt safe because he knew all the rules of the game. This harmony was based on the absence of fear of the forces of nature, which often paralyzes the will of modern man. The Indians believed that the cold had its own spirit, with which one could and should negotiate through proper behavior and rituals. They thanked the animals for their skins and the trees for their branches, creating an ethical connection with the materials of their daily life. This attitude made their lives meaningful and filled with respect for every detail of their surroundings. For them, survival was not a competition, but a form of coexistence with the great mystery of life. The elders taught the young that winter was a time for storytelling and passing on wisdom within the warm circle of the family. Long nights under layers of skins were the perfect time to learn the history of the tribe and the laws of the ancestors. The warmth of the bedding was associated with the security and continuity of the generations that had survived here before them. Knowing how to stay warm was the key to preserving the entire culture intact for centuries. Every child knew that their life depended on how well they learned the lessons of dealing with snow and fire. The final chapter sums up our extensive analysis of the physical and cultural aspects of survival in the snow. We have seen that behind the apparent simplicity lie the most complex principles of thermal engineering and a deep philosophical rationale. The heritage of the indigenous peoples of North America is not only museum exhibits, but also a living textbook of wisdom for all of us. May the warmth of their ancient fires warm your imagination and make you think about our own relationship with the world. We bid farewell to the Great Plains and their owners, taking with us a piece of their incredible experience. We have completed our detailed exploration of how the indigenous peoples of North America turn the deadly cold into an ally. These unique insulation techniques, multi-layered bedding made of grass and fur, and understanding of the physics of air allow us to appreciate the greatness of ancient cultures in a new way. Which of these lessons on surviving in harmony with nature do you think could be useful to modern people in their everyday lives? Please suggest topics for future videos about the lifestyles and survival tactics of different peoples around the world that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on exciting new episodes.